The dust never truly settled over southwestern Iran on April 3, 2026. That was the day an American F-15E Strike Eagle, a twin-engine all-weather fighter jet built for exactly the kind of precision strikes the United States had been carrying out for 5 straight weeks, was knocked out of the sky by Iranian air defenses. The shoot-down was a nightmare scenario for the U.S. military, with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps also racing to locate the missing crew in the rugged terrain of southwest Iran. The war, now entering its 5th week, had just changed its face. This was not supposed to happen. Iran's successful downing of the jet came despite repeated claims from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and other officials that the United States had achieved dominance of the Iranian skies. President Donald Trump had told the nation in a primetime address only days before that Iran had no ability to respond from the air. "They have no anti-aircraft equipment," he declared. "Their radar is 100% annihilated." The wreckage of an American fighter jet on Iranian soil told a different story. The F-15E flies with a 2-member crew. One crew member was pulled out relatively quickly after the aircraft went down. The search for the second, the weapons systems officer, stretched into the weekend, pushing the military and the nation's nerves to their limits. An American A-10 Warthog, which had been providing covering fire for the rescue teams searching for the missing officer, took fire and was damaged. Its pilot ejected over the Persian Gulf and was successfully recovered. 2 search and rescue helicopters were also hit during the operation, injuring the crews, before safely returning to base. The second crew member, a colonel and weapons systems officer, did not wait to be found. For more than a day, he evaded capture in the mountains of Iran, equipped with little more than a pistol, a communication device, and a tracking beacon. At one point, he scaled rugged terrain to a ridgeline 7,000 feet above sea level, hiding alone in a mountain crevice as Iranian forces closed in. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced a public search, offering a reward of $60,000 to any Iranian civilian who could locate and hand over the American officer. The pressure from both sides was immense. The Central Intelligence Agency was at the center of what followed. CIA operatives launched a deception campaign to confuse Iranian officials, spreading false information that both crew members had already been found and that U.S. forces were working on exfiltration. The agency also reportedly facilitated contact with civilians willing to shelter U.S. military forces inside Iran. The recovery mission involved the creation of a makeshift U.S. remote airbase within Iran itself. 2 Lockheed C-13. Hercules transport planes were intentionally blown up by the U.S. at this base to prevent them from falling into Iranian hands, as they became stuck and needed to be replaced by 3 different aircraft flown in. On April 5th, U.S. Special Forces conducted the final extraction. The elaborate nighttime operation came one day ahead of a deadline Trump had set for Tehran to make a deal or open the Strait of Hormuz. No Americans were killed or wounded during the rescue. "Mission accomplished," a U.S. official confirmed. Trump called it an Easter miracle, saying the rescuers were brilliant, strong, decisive, and as cool as anyone can be. The men who have spent their careers studying war, retired generals, former NATO commanders, senior combat veterans, watched all of this unfold and began drawing very different conclusions from the politicians. Major General Randy Manner addressed the question of what comes next after the recovery of the crew. Colonel Cedric Layton analyzed images of the downed F-15 equipment. Major General James Spider Marks discussed the possibility of boots on the ground. Major General McCarley detailed the military assets being deployed ahead of a possible ground operation, and Lieutenant General Mark Hertling joined Fareed Zakaria to discuss the scale of U.S. troop deployment in the Middle East. Former NATO Commander General Wesley Clark began formulating how the war could eventually find an end. Their analysis pointed in one clear direction. The 5th week of this war had exposed both the continued strength of the American military machine and the uncomfortable truth that Iran was not yet finished fighting. Iran had abandoned calibrated retaliation for rapid escalation, expanding the war across the region and raising the stakes globally. The evidence was everywhere. The United Arab Emirates said its air defense systems had engaged 23 ballistic missiles and 56 drones from Iran just that weekend. Since the start of the war in February, UAE air defenses had engaged nearly 500 ballistic missiles, 23 cruise missiles, and more than 2,100 drones. At least 2 UAE military members had been killed, with more than 215 people injured across the country. The Strait of Hormuz had become the pressure point on which the entire war now balanced. Iran effectively blocked the strait, through which roughly 20% of global oil and natural gas supplies normally pass, triggering a worldwide energy crisis and driving up prices. Trump had given Tehran a deadline: open the strait or face the consequences. On April 4th, he wrote on Truth Social, "Remember when I gave Iran 10 days to make a deal or open up the Hormuz Strait? Time is running out. 48 hours before all hell will rain down on them." After the successful rescue of the F-15 crew, the language grew even sharper. He threatened to strike power plants, bridges, and oil wells simultaneously on what he called Power Plant Day. The generals watching from their positions outside the chain of command understood what this moment truly meant. Defense Secretary Hegseth had noted that the upcoming days will be decisive, words that carried real operational weight. Just days before, the Pentagon had removed the Army's top general, along with 2 other senior officers, in one of the most significant wartime leadership shakeups during active U.S. combat operations in recent years. Hegseth told Army Chief of Staff General Randy George to retire immediately. He also fired General David Hodden, who led Army Training and Doctrine Command, and Major General William Green, Jr., the Army's Chief of Chaplains. George had been appointed by President Biden in 2023 and was a decorated veteran of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He was asked to step down amid reports that he had disagreed with Hegseth's decision to block the promotion of several top Army colonels to 1-star general. The Pentagon made clear it intended to replace him with a leader aligned with Hegseth and Trump's vision for the Army. For the retired generals watching from the outside, this was a signal that whatever was coming next would be shaped by commanders chosen not just for their battlefield competence, but for their political alignment with the administration. Retired General Jack Keane said on Fox News that several Persian Gulf states were preparing for offensive operations in coordination with U.S. Central Command. Some were already defending themselves, some preparing for combat, and one had reportedly already begun operations. He added that 2 others were about to get going. The operations, Keane said, would involve coordinated selected targets under the oversight of Admiral Cooper and Central Command, contributing to the offensive nature of the ongoing regional military campaign. The broader picture painted by 5 weeks of war was one of enormous destruction and unsettled outcomes. By mid-March, the Israeli military had estimated that between 3,000 and 4,000 Iranian soldiers and commanders had been killed. By March 18th, the Henga Organization for Human Rights estimated the number of Iranian military dead had risen past 5,300. At least 2,076 people had been killed and 26,500 injured in Iran since February 28th, when U.S. and Israeli forces launched strikes and killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei and several other senior military and political leaders. 13 American service members had been lost. And yet, the war ground forward. The retired generals who broke it all down, men who had lived inside these decisions, who had drafted battle plans and watched them collide with reality, returned to one consistent truth: war never moves cleanly in the direction of the men who start it. The F-15E crew member hiding in a mountain crevice at 7,000 feet, an entire CIA operation mounted to pull a single American officer out of enemy territory. 2 C-130 transport planes blown up on an improvised airstrip inside Iran. This was week 5. A war that began with massive strikes and bold declarations was now being fought, in moments, one rescue operation at a time. The Strait of Hormuz remained effectively closed. The deadline loomed. A Panamanian-flagged crude oil tanker had been seen moving through the strait after departing an Iraqi oil terminal, but transits remained well below pre-war levels. The global economy watched the waterway, the generals watched the maps, and the men with boots in the field watched the mountains of southern Iran, calculating how much farther this thing still had to go.